All right, man. We're rolling.
Hello,
All right,
Nathan.
good. Hey, I'm glad it worked. There we go. Showing that we're live. All right, thanks for joining. Nathan Day alongside my comrades, Brandon Yanis, Brad Mabry, and always appreciate everybody checking these out. What's up, Scott? Thanks for tuning in. We always like people interacting there in the chat, so make sure you write in here where you're watching from and what you hope to get for Christmas this year. It's right around the corner. So, or Hanukkah, first day of Hanukkah. So, appreciate everybody tuning in here. We've got a fun, interactive kind of event. If you've never joined us on these before, um, he doesn't miss these things. All right. If you've never joined us on here before, it's always fun that people ask questions in the chat, make comments. We always appreciate everybody tuning in. So this thing is recorded. We will make sure that we share the recording probably tomorrow, and you can always go back and rewatch. So don't feel like you've got to furiously take notes. But for tonight's topic, we're going to be discussing that final push. It's hard to imagine, but we were looking it up earlier today. Cannot believe how close we are to so many shows that are just right around the corner or feel like they're right around the corner. I'll share it in a chat here, but we're 18 days to Breeders' Cup, 28 days to Perry, 35 days to Denver, 52 days to Fort Worth, 64 days to San Angelo, 70 days to San Antonio, and 93 days to Houston. So,
And
that
16 days until your January ones are born for all your Midwest stuff.
that's correct. In most states, they've been born for about 15 days. For
Okay.
December 1, that's how it is. Maybe not in Illinois. I think it's different in Illinois. Is that correct, Brandon?
Yeah, we're waiting.
You're waiting. Yep. Waiting to hatch. All right. So we want to talk tonight about what are our kind of our go-to products here for this final push, and we've got a great lineup, especially not only on the complete feed side but on the supplement side as well. But we're going to talk about both. We're going to talk about our complete feeds as well as the supplement side of our business and what we can be feeding. Let's say we are 30 days out and let's say we are approaching that target show. Obviously you can watch this at any point in time and it's going to be relevant when your show is about 30 days out. So we'll start with on the complete feed side. Brandon, I know that when we talked earlier today doing some prep for this, that you made sure that you wanted to bring up 803. So Brandon, I'll kind of kick it off and kind of tell folks what 803 is. I mean, it's originally was designed as a baby pig, kind of a sale prep type diet, kind of our third phase of our starter lineup. We go pre-starter, starter, 803. And it's definitely used a lot on the baby pig side of our business. But we've also seen a lot of results and a lot of success when it comes to feeding big hogs. So but let's start on the complete feed side of things. I think often we start kind of forget maybe that we really do have a great lineup when it comes to complete feeds there for that final push.
Yeah, and I would say the biggest thing, especially when we talked about maybe where it fits, and you start, if you're in particularly like in Brad's state where you've got a multitude of different endpoints, you've got a barn of pigs on feed that you know they may be able to show in 30 days, or they may show in 90 or closer to 90. 803 is a great option, in my opinion, to come in there when maybe you don't want to embed a bunch of supplements in there right away, and you're still trying to watch those animals grow or maybe see what they're made of yet. Maybe you haven't really pushed them to that, to that point where they've kind of quit on you or whatever. And you can get there with supplements sometimes when you just get things out of whack and you're trying to embed too many supplements into the equation. And 803 is a great option to bring in there when, we use it a lot in their middle growing phase to a certain extent where we want to boost their nutrition. But yet we don't want to add a bunch of volume to their feed, or if we're not wanting to boost them from 4 to 5 pound of feed intake, but we want to get more nutrition in there. We may come in with a pound of 803 and keep on our, maybe 3 pounds of either 16 or 18 or whatever it may be, to keep them getting more bulk, getting more bloom, um, giving them more animal based proteins that they're going to digest better, and get more reaction in terms of spread and bulk up high, prior to using a supplement in those kind of animals. But what I've seen in with that product is it allows us to, and I think some of this look is maybe coming back a little bit more. We can talk about a lot of trend type stuff, but I think shape and those kind of things is started to be talked about a little bit more, particularly up high. I think we're wanting to make them a little more trendy, or trendier looking, their front third and through their lower third of their body, and keep their lines a little more athletic looking. And I think that's a product that will feed very well in that category when you're trying to boost some spread and some mass to the upper part of their body, but keep their underline a little more athletic and a little more youthful. And that's the reason that we rely on a product like 803 there at the end, or even in the middle part of the growing phase. From that standpoint, particularly when you don't want to bring in the game ons yet, or maybe you want to save that for a later date. I think that one works very, very well, and it is, as you alluded to earlier, it's one of those very versatile feeds in our lineup. Works great on babies, and it works great on big hogs too, from that perspective.
One thing that I think about too is, and I know that you talk about this a lot, Brandon, internally, but then also at a lot of those meetings I've done with you, is that combining 803 with a product like Explode, any time that I know that you talk about this a lot. Hey, buddy, anytime that you talk about increasing the plane of nutrition, right? So
Yeah,
anytime that we are increasing your more digestible proteins or your higher quality proteins or animal proteins alongside a product like Explode, you're going to continue to see and you will get a better result, correct?
absolutely. So it's based on the plan of nutrition that you feed and the level of amino acids, but then when you add the caloric intake to it, and then the type of digestible nutrients that you're putting in there too, you're going to get more bang from your buck when you use Explode along with it. In fact, and when you look at Explode, if we want to get into that category, you start talking about Explode versus other ractopamine type products, and even in the time when we had 811, um, I always fed 803 and Explode together, because it's even boosting your nutrition up even higher, and you're going to get more response from a product like that based on the level of aminos and the amount of protein that's embedded in Explode and the extra nutrition that comes in the bag and just Explode alone, rather than it just being a ractopamine type product. And so, when we're talking that final push, and we're trying to really maximize everything that we can out of those animals, every 1% gives you an advantage over the next one. And so if we can do everything that we can to make them as good as we possibly can, it's going to give us an edge at the end.
Scott brings up a good point there in the chat, Brandon, and you can touch on this if you'd like about feeding 803 pellet versus 803 meal. Also the caveat here that not all products in our lineup are going to be available everywhere, right? So 803 pellet versus 803 meal, those are the exact same diets, right? There, it's the whether or not you have 803 pellet versus 803 meal readily available to you, they are the exact same diet. Just one is in pellet form, and one is in meal form. But do touch on that, Brandon, just a little
Yeah,
bit as the difference between a pellet and a meal.
yeah, for sure. I prefer to go back to 803 pellet at the end as well. And I would tell you that if you look at just the science of a pellet versus a meal feed, you're going to get about 10% more digestibility out of a pelleted feed, basically because you're already doing the heated digestion. When you make a pellet, so you're already heating it up, you're already breaking it down a little bit, and that product is going to be more digestible. So you should, in theory, get a little more shape and a little more spread up high on that pellet, and it should be more digestible pound for pound. You look at the meal side of that. Um, you're roughly going to get about a 10% advantage in feed intake if you use a meal in the same category. If you put a pigs on, where they're eating on full feeder, and you just study it from a scientific standpoint, feeding pellets, you're getting about 10% more digestibility. A meal, you're getting about 10% more actual feed intake. And so I would tell you at our place, I mean, we try to do more meal 803 on baby pigs. As we look at getting them prepped for pig sales or whatever it is, just because people like those things to look like a 280-pound market hog when they're 40, 50 pounds. And we're trying to drop a little bit of body and get their lines a little deeper. So we want them to eat as much feed as they can when they're younger, so that we can get that body line dropped where we want it to. Hopefully we've achieved that look on the big ones, and we're trying to get back to use a product like 803 to get those highly digestible animal-based proteins to get our shape where we want it to be. So hopefully that mid body's already dropped, or your flank is kind of already where you want it to be, where we're really just trying to get as much digestibility in them as we can on a lower feed intake to help our shape and those kind of things. So I would have anticipated that. That's why we go back to pellets at the end. With or without explode. Sorry, he fed it with explode. Yes, you should see that also with the explode in there as well. But whether you fed the explode or not, you should have seen just a little better advantage in terms of shape with pellet than a meal as well.
Yeah, let's dive into explode just a little bit there too. Maybe talk, and I know you touched on it just a second ago, but you know, one of the things that some of the feedback that we get from folks that feed explode or maybe haven't fed it prior is that they feel like the volume or the amount of explode that they have to use is a disadvantage versus competitors, or maybe versus some other products that are out there. Brandon, I know that you've got some good talking points, and Brad, obviously, feel free to chime in here too. Brandon, I know that we talk a lot about this and maybe why it is that way, what sets explode apart, and why we have it the inclusion that we have it in that form.
Well, I guess a lot of different reasons, and Brad's got pigs on feed as well too, and so I always ask a lot of people what percentage of protein or what percentage of protein your barn is eating, and in general you're going to get a multitude of different answers. I mean, you may have a pig in pen one that's eating a 14. You may have a pig in pen two that's eating a 10, and you may have one at the end that's on a 20, and so just coming in and utilizing a ractopamine product, which majority of the ractopamine options out there in the pig space, there's a couple that are fortified. There's a couple that have added nutrition to them, but majority of them are just adding that ractopamine molecule to the feed with a carrier, and so it's leaving your base nutrition where it is. So if you look at Explode is a pretty bolstered nutrition package or diet anyway, and then it has elevated levels of ractopamine in it. And so I would tell you, even if we pulled the ractopamine out of Explode, that diet is going to feed pretty hot because it's very elevated in terms of aminos, and it's got a lot of value, from that perspective. And so what we've really done is added ractopamine to a very elevated plane of nutrition in terms of aminos, the building blocks that are going to make it work. And that's what the ractopamine needs to be able to get the response in your pig. And so if you're feeding a poor quality diet and you're needing some response from a ractopamine option, Explode is what's going to help to get a better response because of the added nutrition that's in the bag in Explode. And I tell people, I think it truly works the best to get spread underneath and shoulder of all the options out there in the ractopamine space. That's the one that gives you the most shoulder spread and mass. So if you're needing to really bulk up front and get some spread underneath, that's going to be the one that's going to give you the best chance to do that. And I do believe that the added nutrition that's in the bag, rather than just the ractopamine itself, is what gives you that look versus a tablespoon of this or a small ounce of this or whatever it may be. And so that's the real thing is there. It's built in there to, um, the feeding level being higher is actually a good thing. More times than not, you're adding a better quality product to it rather than just adding ractopamine to your base feed that may not be achieving where you want to be.
Yeah, good comments there. Brad, I'm going to jump to you. We've got a good question here from Christina that I'm going to pull up here for everybody to see. We are using Smorfil for a few of our pigs. Question though, what is milk it being used for? I was told to put one of my pigs on it. I just don't know enough about it. So, Bradley, I
Yes.
will jump to you, my friend.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Scoot up a little closer. You sound really far away from your mic, if you can help it.
you serious?
Yeah,
Can you hear me now, Nathan?
much better. Yeah.
Um, so the main thing to realize, don't overthink it too much, Christina. Like protein adds muscle, fat adds fat, and fiber adds uh, bulk or belly, right? I mean, it kind of an our barn. So a product like Milk It is really just a really highly nutritional source of protein and fat, right? So it would be a significantly lesser version of Game On in some aspects, is what I'll tell you. Because you have lower levels of fat and protein, but they're still animal based, so they're very highly digestible. So the normal pig that I would put on Milk It would be one when I look at that animal and I just think skinny or behind or needs more nutrition. That's it. When I look at that animal, I think, man, I don't know if we've got enough time to get that animal caught up on normal grain based diets. I'm thinking of something like Milk It. The other time that I love to feed Milk It is when I'm feeding Explode, because to Brandon's point, I'm tricking that animal's body into laying down more muscle than what its maturity and genetics want to. So I need to make sure that the proper fuel is in its feed to lay down that type of efficient muscle over a shorter period of time. And so that's when I use Milk It. As far as Smorfil, glad to hear you use it. That would be a fiber source for us, and more. I don't feed oats in our barn unless it's in Smorfil. I can go on a tangent about oats. Don't like them by themselves. I don't think they stand alone very good. But kind of the dusty stuff that's in Smorfil is where all the good part is. To steal Brandon's word, the goodies. That's where the goodies are, and that material that's in there along with that is what's really being the best fiber source for your pig. Anytime we add fiber, we can slow down digestion, which helps increase their microbiome in their digestive tract. So fiber's great in pigs. Yeah, that'll keep your appetite up, keep things flowing correctly. But also, um, we don't talk about carbs quite a bit in our livestock nutrition, but oats are carbs. And so at the very end, these last 40 days, most of our pigs will get switched over from a product like Full Tank and get eased over to something like Smorfil once again, because we're through that cute stage that wins jackpot shows. And now we start really focusing on what it takes to create an animal that can be competitive at 285 pounds, which is that all we've got to combine cute and bulk and mass. And so something like Smorfil will help you kind of achieve that towards the end.
I would add there another thing on Milk It is that, um, man, you can get some pretty quick response on that. Very very similar to an electrolyte type approach as well. Particularly if you're going to put it in water, let them consume some fluid. You
Yeah.
can see a very very quick response in their forerib. And I would tell you, I think it is one of the best products from a jackpotting perspective to keep animals blooming, keep them looking appropriate in their cover, but yet not getting them too mature too early. Because to Brad's point, when you're in that jackpot stage, you kind of have to be cute. You kind of have to have a look of continuation, like you have a future in most cases. And I think that is a product that can keep you out of the ditch. It can give you the look that you need, but it can keep you out of the ditch long term. I think that's a great product that we have, that is always in our barn somewhere.
Yeah.
Whether we're getting babies ready for a pig sale, or we're feeding pigs mid season, or at the very end. It's just always in there.
Yeah, one quick caveat about milk is it is formulated for a mature pig. It is not formulated for an orphan baby pig. So I know a lot of you are farrowing or maybe even done farrowing at this point, but do not use milk it on a baby pig. I know we talk about that all the time. I mean, you should know that by now from us, but at the same time, it is not medicated for or formulated for a baby pig. So it's made for big pigs in the stomach of a mature pig. So let's switch gears on products a little bit and jump into Game On. And I have no doubt there's going to be folks that have opinions about Game On, but what it does still boil down to is that Game On does work. It does do what it says it's going to do in terms of adding bulk, mass, shape up high, all of those things that we're still after in the show ring. I mean, those terms and those things that we're after in terms of muscle shape is not going away anytime soon. I mean, you still have to be broad backed. You still have to be intimidating, as Brad likes to call out. You still have to offer muscle, especially in these market hogs. So let's jump into Game On. I know you guys both have opinions about that. Brandon, I'll let you go first.
Well, I think if we start looking at that product, and maybe it's years of existence. It was 10 years ago we were testing the product today, or this time frame, and so it's one of those time tested, mother approved type products, if you will, that has been around the block, and you know what, it's seen a multitude of other products try to come into the space, candidly. And it's one of them that's still a staple in terms of value and how it's built. It's never changed, and that's why it's been one of those products. It has been a little bit volatile from time to time in terms of pricing, but I would say the common thing that we always end up hearing is, I tried one of the other products, and then I went back and bought a bucket anyway because I really needed something to work. And so it is one of those products that I would tell you, we use. All the good ones that have a chance get it all the time. Now, we may not feed it for as long as we did in the trial phase, when we were trying to figure it out. But when you still need an advantage at the end, and particularly when we're not on it the entire stretch of feeding, I think you get a great response at the very end. When an animal has hit maturity, I think the response is absolutely incredible at the very end. That's why we probably save it more there than going to the jackpotting phase. I think that milk it fits better in a category like that, and we're going to utilize milk it and those products earlier on in that animal's phase of their life, so that we can achieve at the end where we want to go. We're also going to use products like 803 prior to that, so that we can minimize maybe the amount of that we're going to feed on that pig at the very end. But when we need to get one right in bloom and freshness up high, and again, I talked to it earlier about 803, when we want them to look right up high, but keep their underline more athletic and still being trendy in their look, that's the product that we're going to go, because it's going to hit that specified spot that it needs to go on their body. And if you look at the show business today, there is an astronomical amount of money that's spent on some of these animals at the very, very end, and at the start of their project. And if we're going to leave that all on the table, just for a little bit of dough here or there, I mean, it's one thing you've got to look at. But I would say, when we need to get them right and we need to supply nutrition in a very small amount, that's what we're going to go for. And I think, the number of pigs, there are very few animals that are getting ready for exhibition that can't have some amount of a product like Game On, or in that space. And the only ones that I would say are the ones that are absolutely obese already. Those animals are probably not going to get a tremendous benefit from it. unless you're able to come in there a couple weeks ahead of that, burn them down, and then you need a product to freshen them back up very, very quickly. That's probably the only space that an animal maybe can't utilize at least some game on at some point in their life. But what I've found is even those animals that the expensive babies that have maybe pushed the envelope in every stretch of the imagination in their entire feeding career, you know, you can't push those animals very hard on feed, even at the very end, because they're so extreme. Those animals that you need to pull their intake back on a little bit, but you need to keep their maturity right, and you need to keep them fresh enough to so that it doesn't look like you're pinching on them. This product works absolutely fantastic on those animals there at the very end, also, just to make them look like that you have achieved everything that you can out of them at the very end. So it's one of those that there's just not too many spaces that it doesn't fit. And I
Yeah,
know it's expensive, it's not cheap, but it does work, and it is time tested throughout there. And the reason that it works the way it does is the quality of product that's going into that to that mix that makes it achieve the bloom and the bulk in the specific area. We could make it cheaper. We could make that product. We could tag it the same and make it way cheaper and make it look different. It wouldn't work the same. And we've chose not to do that through
right.
our time frame here on Game On. And so, it does ebbs and flow a little bit in terms of price, but it is one of those that when you really need to make a response in that specific area, the upper third of their body, that's the one that's going to get you there as quick as anything. And I would tell you, we feed it probably a little bit differently. We're going to feed it harder at the very end, I would say. And I do think that there are some animals, particularly purebred animals, that react a little faster to it because I think those animals are naturally quicker to flesh, particularly after they've already hit maturity. And so I think those animals react to the product faster than some others do. And so we will use more like a cup of feeding, and we're going to use it pretty hard between a cup to a cup and a half of feeding for about 7 to 10 days in a lot of instances to achieve kind of what we're trying to get to. But I do think that there's animals that maybe take a little bit longer to achieve that finished kind of a look, and they may need to be on a lower level for a longer period of time just to get the look that you're wanting. Now, the great thing about Game On, in my personal opinion, is it is really hard to look like you overdone it in terms of the amount that you will use. So those animals don't get to a point like they would on white fat where they look like you just iced a cake or they're literally obese looking. They don't get that way on that product generally. The only ones that I've seen that you can tell you went a little too far on is if those animals don't have enough real chest and they're coming to you, they will look a little bit inverted because you can build enough back on them that they will look more inverted unless you've used enough explode to keep their lower body pried open enough at the same time. And so, but if you have an animal that's built pretty appropriately underneath, the nice part about that is if you feel like you've gone too far, back it down and you can still maintain where you are. Whereas if you go too far on a white fat, you're cooked. I mean, you've got to almost stop, reset, pull the reins back, go a different direction before you can come back and really achieve the look that you're wanting to go with. Yes, the cup being the 8 ounce cup that comes in it. Um,
You were saying you feed a cup.
yes, yep. I seen something come up on the um,
He was asking if you're feeding that using that cup that comes with it.
yeah, yeah. The Game On cup that comes in it. We generally use that or a handful, which is a pretty heaping, and it's really close to that cup size. Um, and I would tell you another thing that we'll do a lot, particularly there at the end, is we will mix Game On, milk it, and for sure in water, and we will apply a lot of stuff that way. Um, honestly, in a lot of cases, rather than putting it in feed. Truthfully, just because I still like those animals to eat the feed that they're eating. Um, whether or not I'm going to switch one from a 10, a 16, whatever. If I'm going to fluctuate, maybe what type of feed I'm going to feed through there. A lot of times, I will use some of those other products like Game On Milk It, and for sure I will embed them in a drink and just let them drink it after they've consumed feed, just so they don't get addicted to that stuff having to be in their feeder at all times. So, we can do a lot of different things, but a lot of times that'll be a go-to mix for me when we're getting them ready there at shows as well, just from a hydration perspective.
Yeah, those are great comments. I mean, I think that's one of the most underutilized pieces of Game On is once you start to kind of understand how versatile that product is, you can see it work in so many different ways in different areas. I mean, I remember when we first used it, on some boar pigs at a show in our water. I mean, this is several years ago at this point, but I was amazed at the consumption, how well they drank that, and the response that we saw. Again, kind of it almost fit kind of in that electrolyte. It's not an electrolyte, but kind of fit into that category, and really I thought made a major difference. We do it now on almost every single one of them now at this point to get that right kind of flesh and get that right kind of shape up high while we're at the show.
And you bring that up, Nathan, and I would tell you that's another thing that I have seen countless people hold or manage weight on pigs at the end just using Game On and water. Honestly, when they didn't have just a tremendous amount of room, and that speaks to the density and the digestibility of that, and how dense that nutrition package is that's embedded in Game On. It's awesome. I mean, you can supply quite a bit of nutrition and not a whole lot of volume of that. And so, I've seen people really manage and maintain weight, and we a lot to where you're talking about. We learned some of that just by some of those boars at shows that really weren't eating, but they would drink Game On, and they looked like they were holding together very well. And they would keep everything kind of together without actually consuming much nutrition. And so I know a number of people that have utilized that on big bears at the very end, just to kind of manage weight and keep them from withering away up high. And yet that volume of water that you can put in there will keep their mid body kind of expanded enough where they don't look hungry either. And so it's a nice kind of option that you can utilize there if you're in a pinch, just to manage weight on some bears that have gotten out of hand.
Bradley, let's kind of switch gears a little bit and start maybe discussing some of the crossbred side of things. Let's say we are in that final 30 to 60 days out, and we're kind of in that in betweener stage. These pigs are weighing roughly, call it 180 to maybe 200, and maybe we've been holding on them. Maybe they've gotten a little dry on us. Maybe they're not quite as fleshy, right? And some of those crosses maybe just a little bit tougher to lay down that right kind of cover that we're after. What would your idea, your thought process be when you go down there and you study those bears and you're thinking, okay, I've got 60 days, I've got 30 days, but we really need to start going, or I'm never going to get it.
Yeah, I think down here we have the luxury of we just have so many shows to take them to, right? So I think it's a little different when you're trying to nail the Indiana State Fair, the Illinois State Fair, because you don't have the flexibility to roll them into a show 30 days later. So I don't know if I have a big sense of urgency targeting a particular show just because we're entering all of them. But I would say, our kids are in Denver, and so we're 30 days out from Denver. We'll take pures to Denver, no crosses. But, like Brandon said, some of those pigs will lay down, finish, flesh a little bit easier. And, it's funny, we're in a weird spot in the industry where all the marketing is around burning fat. I've never seen a lean pig win a big major. It still takes a fattened pig to win a huge show. He just can't be too fat. I always say, like, fat animals look bad, but animals that are getting fat look good. That it's almost like that's the definition of bloom, and an animal's ability to lay on a little bit of flesh and the right amount of flesh. And so, a lot of that, Nathan, can be done with just feed. I mean, the one thing I would say is I'm a pretty dumb guy when it comes to the show pig thing. I keep it pretty simple. If you look at the difference between the one way we can add more flesh is we can feed a higher volume of feed, right? And one of the misnomers is that protein burns fat. Look, if it was that easy, I would be a lean dude and I would just eat lots of protein. Protein doesn't burn fat. We got to look at I always tell people, look at the next 20 pounds of gain. Okay, so when we make feeding changes at the house, I look at the animal and I go, okay, if I got to pick what the next 20 pounds of his weight was going to be, what would I choose that 20 pounds to be? Would it be 20 straight pounds of muscle, or would it be 20 straight pounds of fat, or somewhere in between? And then my next question is, how long am I going to give that animal to gain 20 pounds? Is it 7 days? Is it 30 days? Right? And so when we start thinking about the next 20 pounds, it'll give yourself some grace. And I would just tell you, if you look at the difference between like 18G and 16G, right? I am not smart enough to see a physiological difference, like a physical difference in an animal that's been on 16G versus 18G for 7 days. And that's because in a pound of 18G versus a pound of 16G, there's 9 grams of protein in a pound of 8. Like what I'm saying is it's such a small level. But over that full 20 pounds of gain, I might see that difference. Does that make sense? So like if I feed that animal 60 pounds of 16G and 60 pounds of 18G and I net back 20 pounds of gain, I might see that difference where I laid on a little bit more protein and muscle with the pig on a higher protein. So I know you asked a really simple question and I said I keep it simple and gave a complex answer, but basically what I would do is I'd say, okay, well, if I don't have enough time and I need to get the animal fat quickly and I want to save $1 and I don't need extra shape up high, I'm going to use a product like a little bit of Sumo. I'm going to add in my s'more fill, get a little carb effect there. I might add in Milk It or something like that. If I need to do it in a quick amount of time and I need muscle along with it, I'm going to use Game On. I will tell you as a feed salesman, right, I'm biased because I'm going to sell Sunglo to you. If I was wearing a different shirt and I wanted you to win, I'm going to tell you the same thing I'm about to tell you. Yes, Game On costs more money than it used to. Things have all cost more money, and I don't like it. I don't like paying extra money for anything. What I really don't like is when I pay for something and it doesn't say what it's going to do. I don't like that. I don't like that. I've got 4 years to show with my oldest son left, and I'm going to do what I know. And to me, when I pay for something at a premium and it does what it says it's going to do, that actually is valuable to me. And so to me, I would tell you, I've narrowed the focus on what animals get Game On, but I know when I need to add bulk and mass, they're going to get it and it's going to work. I just haven't had a pig it hasn't worked on. Now, does every pig get it? No, because I'm not a great guy at buying pigs, so a lot of the pigs aren't worth the extra spend. Those are pigs I might feed Milk It a little bit longer to, right? And it's probably not going to have the dramatic effect up high that Game On will, but I can get that bloom or that extra flesh and a little bit of muscle over a longer period of time. And so I think the main thing is keep this really, really simple and just think, okay, as I'm looking at this animal, oh, I know, Scott, everybody did. And that's what, I mean, it's fine. So, and the thing that we're not going to do is cheapen up our product in order to, is cheapen up when I say cheapen up the product, there's a lot of talks when we did this, like, should we dilute it down? No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to, it's a human quality grade product that we're going to keep doing so that we can try to have the very, very best. Now, we're going to have Facebook Lives and stuff to say, hey, if you don't want to spend that, what can we do? I'm also not going to say you can't feed other products that we have and get a similar effect over a longer period of time, right? It's not going to be as dramatic, but there's definitely ways to do it. So anyway, Game On, we'll set that aside. But the main thing I want to say is as a show parent, your job is to put your kiddos in the best position to win, but it's also for you guys to learn from our mistakes and to be thinking ahead, right? That's where you guys need to be thinking, what do I want the next 20, 60, or 100 pounds to look like? Christina talked about earlier that she finished jackpotting shows this weekend and we're now working for county. Okay, that's us. We don't jackpot, so we haven't been to a jackpot show this year, and we won't go out to one. Now, with that being said, our county is basically around 30 days, give or take, 32, 33 days from now. And it's hard in Texas because we've got pigs that we're trying to get big enough to be competitive at county, right? And at the same time, save some of that extra bloom and flesh to get that pig all the way to Houston, which is 90 days away, right? Um, so we just try to think as a family the next 20 pounds, next 60 pounds, next 100 pounds, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that mentality, right? Is always thinking ahead, right? Always thinking about what you can control in that animal. You can't control everything, right? But there are things that we can control, and what we put in them is definitely something that you can't make that pig's legs any bigger, right? You can't, you can't go down there and manipulate him in every way possible. But man, understanding where your next 20 pounds need to go or where you want them to go is definitely a good start. Good way to think about it. Let's kind of talk about Scott's question here real quickly about I don't know if the whole thing's going to fit on there or not, but basically what we're talking about here is on especially on these pures, right? Of keeping them attractive up front. What can we do? Maybe not necessarily hardcore at the end, but maybe what are some ways that we can help prevent that, or some ways that we can attack that maybe during the entirety of the feeding phase. And Brandon, I mean, you've fed as many pures at the highest level as anybody, at the highest levels of success as anybody. What would you tell Scott here in this scenario?
I would say a few things. That one big thing that we do a lot of is feed a lot of low fat diets. Where we just don't put any fat in them. And I would be very similar. I mean, we're not jackpotting type people. It's just not what we do a whole lot of, and so a combination of low fat diets and utilizing full tank where you can keep those pigs satisfied a little bit through their growing phase when those pigs want to eat 6 or 8 pounds and they want to be gluttonous, forcing them to eat 2 to 3 pounds and eating maybe 5 cups of volume, the 5 pound cups, meaning that we have, in a product like Full Tank that they're really not going to get any real nutrition out of in terms of energy and flesh and those kind of things. It's just going to keep them full, keep them happy. We do a lot of that. I would tell you, when we're starting a group of pigs, I mean, Full Tank is the largest supplement that we buy in volume at the very beginning of the feeding phase, and the one feed that I probably buy pallets of at a time is 16 low or 18 low. Those two diets, and we'll feed a lot of those, and you know I can generally get those pures to flesh at the right time when we need to, particularly the barrels. I mean, the barrels at some point they'll turn into a couch potato and get fleshy and mature and do what they need to do. And there might be some of those gilts that might take a little bit longer, but at the same time, those breed pigs generally are going to hit physiological maturity just a little bit quicker than what some of the crosses will in terms of their appetite and all that stuff in there. And so, those low fat diets are, they carry the same nutrition that we would have in 16, 18, those kind of things. They have the same value from that standpoint, and just they don't have the oil and the energy in there. And so, the thing that I would tell you is, pound for pound, those pigs aren't going to gain as much weight on that low fat diet as what they would on 16 or 18G. So those pigs are going to perform just a little bit lower. If you need more gain, you're going to have to feed them just a little bit more of that. Now, at the same time, just like cattle, any kind of species. I mean, they can get fat on number 2 yellow corn as well. And so the more feed volume that you're feeding, as Brad alluded to there with the protein on 16 and 18, when your feed volume increases, they're still going to flesh and get more mature when you increase feed volume. And so a lot of times we'll try to back feed volume down a little bit and then use full tank as a way to keep them happy without overfeeding them.
I'll tell you another thing, Scott. If you're, I don't believe, I mean, I've just got to be, I would have to see this to believe it. I've been marketed to a lot that we're going to get subtraction by addition. In other words, we're going to add a scoop of this and this thing's going to get removed. And I just haven't seen that in my own self. Like I said, I would think that if I could eat something and burn fat, I would eat it, a lot of it, and I'd probably look different. So I just kind of continue to bring back logic, back into like just keep it really simple, right? So, I'll tell you something like final control, okay? Well, final control will help you put on less neck in the next 20 pounds than what you had because it's high lysine and high protein. But it doesn't burn fat. I mean, it just doesn't. You're not going to put that in there and fat melts off of. What you're going to do is you're going to increase the lysine level and the protein level of your feed, and you're going to densen down you're going to make your protein more dense, your feed more dense from a protein standpoint, be able to feed less of it. And you feeding a lower volume of more dense feed is going to be less calories to your pig. And guess what happens? He burns fat. His body is what burns fat. So if you want to burn fat, feed your pig less. Okay. But here's the problem. If you put your pig on a high lysine, low volume diet and their neck's fat, you're going to lose their belly. And as soon as you lose their belly, their neck's going to look fatter. And then you're going to come back and try to get more belly, and logic's going to tell you to feed them fat to get their belly bigger, and it's going to roll back to their face again. So if you're talking about the last 30 days and you're like, hey, man, I'm struggling getting this one pretty enough fronted, I'm going to tell you, all right, what's the intimidating piece of that pig? Because if I look at that animal and I think their neck's fat, they're either 1, really fat, or 2, too shallow bodied. And so from the heifer standpoint, the cattle world, I'm telling you that animal's built like a power hog in front of his shoulder. I'm going to do what I can in a feed bucket from his shoulder back. And so to me, I'm not going to lay down a bunch of fat to the animal, but to Brandon's point, my full tank is going to go up in that pig, and I'm going to drop their flank as far as possible to make their neck look tolerable. So that's counterintuitive, but it's worked well for me, particularly on some of like the down-eared stuff where, I know that that's coming either, from a Duroc or Chester or, Berkshires with up ears, obviously. But I know that when they mature, it's kind of an overnight thing where they immediately start to fleshen up. Well, I'm going to get their body prepared for that. And even as a judge myself, I'm more tolerant of what's in front of their shoulder if what's behind it is powerful. So just be careful with that. Hey, I'm just going to increase a bunch of amino acids in their feed, burn their neck down, because what really going to happen is you're going to limit feed intake. You're going to burn a little bit of neck. And then when you try to shove their belly back into them, you're going to get a lot of neck back with it, kind of yo-yo them. So I saw Noah posted thoughts on sumo and using on a breeding gilt. Yeah. So sumo is great. It's a fat supplement. It's got animal-based fat in it. It's a more saturated fat. It's kind of an old school supplement that's new school again. We make feeds with sumo as the ingredient and fat source in it down in Texas. And I would tell you it's something you need to start really low. Even though it comes in a big bag, I'd start with a small scoop. So because some pigs are going to react to a fully saturated fat like that and really get fat quickly. An animal that I'm feeding sumo to is when I look at them, I'm thinking muscly, like just muscles. So if they're kind of hard, but they've got a lot of muscle, man, I'm going sumo, right? I know we're kind of talking about pigs, but sumo has recently, we got it approved to be labeled for cattle just because so many breed champion cattle at the Texas majors have been fed sumo to finish them out, finish those steers out. And the handle quality, the firmer fat, and that look that they're going after. So I would say just start at a low amount, know when you're doing that, and then once again, if you're not seeing it after 7, 10 days, you can up your fat. You might see a big reaction and you go, okay, that animal's going to get fat in 10 days. If I do that, I'm going to stop. And then when I'm 10 days out, I'll add it back in.
I would say that
Yeah, great,
that sumos.
great comments. Just one thing, real quick, too. I want people to make sure they will come back to you, Brandon. You know, if you guys are watching on here, maybe you're following along in the chat, maybe you're not. Totally fine either way. But please ask your questions, right? Please drop your questions down there in the chat. You know, we'll do our best to answer everybody, you know, fully here, and don't need to stay on here forever, but you know, thanks, you're going to stay on until everybody gets their questions answered. So, Brandon, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, sumo is one of those things that, you know, if you're sitting there at the, you know, at that 230 to 240 pound mark, and you're saying, man, my pig needs to be fat everywhere, that's a great product to go on to. You know, if you're not just trying to build a little bit of back or do those kind of things and make sure that it stays in a specific area, you know, if they need more flank, if they need more flesh in their forerib, if they can handle more flesh just everywhere, all over their body, that's still a great product to go to. And there's cases where I would recommend that over Game On in those animals um, that are that are harder in their ham loin. They're not real deep in their flank. Their forerib may be a little bit bare, or they're a little bit naked down the lower part of their body yet. If you're still dealing with stuff like that, sumo's a better candidate for those animals than Game On is 1-for-1 at that time frame, because what you'll end up having happen if you pull in a, let's just say if you've got a cross gilt or whatever that's a little hard up high, that has muscle, is a lot of those animals will adhere to the protein component in Game On, and they won't flesh as quickly as what they would on sumo. And so if you really do need to lay a smoother, you know, softer kind of a cover, and you need to soften some expression of muscle, or they need fat all over their body, then, you know, if you can make a circle from their shoulder back in their mid body, flank, upper body, and they need fat everywhere, their whole body, then sumo would be the one that I would recommend in that regard.
Yeah, I would just kind of, no, you're doing the right thing on that. So good stuff. But I would just tell you, like, we don't have to figure it out, right? I mean, our Sunglo team sits in a unique spot where we all have kids showing, right? And that's kind of fun because, you know, when we put an agenda together for a Facebook Live, you can tell it's three dudes talking about pigs, right? I mean, we don't have an agenda. We're like, hey, we're either going to ask questions. I'm going to pick Brandon's brain if nobody's got any questions. If our live audience was 0, we're going to go live for an hour. I'm going to sit here and talk to Brandon about what he's learned and how, you know, we're just three dudes, dads that are feeding hogs, and you kind of are along with us. And so I say all that to say, I wish I could walk you guys out to my feed room and show you our feed board. It's so simple. We do most of our feeding change. The most powerful feeding change you can make is how much you're feeding your pig. It's the volume of what you're feeding. You know, I promise you, you can fit your pig more with just reducing and adding a quantity of feed. And I would tell you it's a more powerful thing to correctly track your weights, because here's the thing. The assumption that your pig's going to gain the same that he's gaining per week right now is not correct. If you're sitting on a Duroc and that dude's gaining 9 pounds a week right now, I can promise you that a good Duroc barrow, the last 3 weeks, one of those weeks, that pig needs to probably gain 20, 25 pounds. I mean, they're red hogs. They're going to try to do it one of those weeks. And so if you're saying, I need to gain a pound a day, and if I get a pound a day, I'll be showing at San Antonio at 290. Well, the problem is that pig might want to gain 20 pounds that last week, and you're sitting on a big skinny one because you couldn't let him do it. And so we could talk about just weight management for an hour, but I just want you guys to understand that there's nowhere more difficult to exhibit livestock, in my opinion, than in Texas, but there's nowhere easier and forgiving, because we have so many shows that will help bail you out of bad weight management to take them to somewhere else. And so I know all these pigs are down here, and trust me, I see it. It's super intimidating, but just, you know, be graceful with yourself and manage your weight. That is one of the hardest things for me to tell someone is I can't help you because you can't feed it anymore. Like, you've got to manage weight. We've got to be down to a maintenance diet, or they're so light. I'm like, whatever he'll eat. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. And so, the main thing is get your pigs on feed, keep them healthy, and start tracking that weight. And if you're rocking along and you're like, hey man, um, this pig's gaining 11 pounds a week. What I like to do at my house, if they're a Duroc, I want that pig weighing 230 pounds less than my target weight. Let me say that. 30 pounds less than my target weight a couple of weeks before the show, right? Call it 21 days before the show. 30 pounds, 21 days before. And I never put a pig at target weight at 300. I'm always thinking like 285. Unless they're built like me and they're small, then I'm like, okay, that dude's going to have to show at a lower weight, right? So, on my crosses, I would tell you.
You could have said us, by the way. You didn't have to just say.
Yeah, but
me.
you're a good lightweight because you're kind of stout skull. You'd be a little jackpotter, stout skull, and you think you're going to get bigger, but you ain't growing. You're baby faced, and like you ain't growing nowhere.
We're tapping out
You
early.
just win a jackpot. I wouldn't win nothing. But so I would tell you, getting that down, and you can put this in your chat feature too. It's target weight minus current weight divided by days till show. So I use this little cheesy app. It's the countdown app. I don't know if y'all can see that, but I can put all the shows down here, and it's how many days till each show. And it's just when I'm making feeding decisions, I can just glance and say, okay, I'm 93 days. So the other thing I would tell you is do not have your pig 245 pounds, 250 pounds and fat. That's not good. The only thing I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt is, like I said earlier, protein adds muscle, fat adds fat. We know those two things, right? And volume adds weight. Okay? But fat is such a more predictable nutrient than protein because they will fatten at some point on fat. And it's the biggest negative, right? So if I'm feeding too much protein and I get too heavy muscle, I'm going to see that and be able to slow them down faster. Because if I stop, they will grow out of it. If I get them too fat, I'm in trouble, right? Because now I have to burn muscle and fat and lose weight in order for them to do that, and I lose bloom. So I try to have my pigs, crossbreds mainly, 245 to 50 pounds, 30 days before the show with a hard, crispy back and a good hind leg if I can find it. And if I've got that, my choice is pretty unlimited at that point. Do they need even more? I'm going to use Explode. If they want more bulk and mass, I can use some Game On. Or it might be a pig that's eating Smorfil and milk it and Explode or something that last day. I do not want to manage flesh or fat the last 30, 40 days. I do not want to be dumping a bunch of amino acids on top of that pig's feed, because what happens is in other species, we'll see that those animals will start to burn their edge on them. Yeah, you're burning their neck, but you're losing that edge, that last rib back. You're losing that squareness and that extra bloom. And so in other species, we'd call that kind of washed out. And so to me, fat is a good thing if used properly, right? And so I want to be the guy that's feeding fat sources and protein and paline towards the end.
Let's jump to Veronica's question here about stuffed. Our bear needs more rib cover. Is stuffed good for that? Our show is in March. They're weighing 120 to roughly 140. Back is good. Neck is nice. Flank just needs more rib.
Yeah, so we've got 3 fiber sources that are labeled for pigs, okay? We've got full tank, we've got Smorfil, Veronica, and we've got stuffed, okay? When I want to add rib and belly and no fat, I use full tank. When I want to add rib and add fat, I use stuffed, and I keep it that simple. The Smorfil I use for adding more bloom and forerib and outward shape.
Completely agree. The one thing that I would tell you is your weight, where you're at 120 to 140. I would just say realizing that you're feeding barrows, and you're still ahead of their maturity curve from a weight perspective. I mean, those pigs have not hit physiological maturity, or what I call the college years, where they go to college and get the freshman 15, and they haven't hit that time in their life cycle yet. And so I would tell you that generally we're gonna be on full tank probably at least on the front side of that, and then I'm gonna let those animals tell me when they hit 150, 160, 170, even 180 on some of those, if they're going to need more flesh and more cover there, because those barrows generally, now I would maybe ask questions more of, are we talking about some pure barrows, cross barrows, whatever. If it's a purebred barrel, 120 to 140, I'm gonna stay on full tank. Just based on what a breed is probably going to look like. They're going to lay down flesh easier than a cross. If it's a harder made, more muscular crossbred barra, then yeah, I'd be okay with stuffed. But I do think that you're still on the front side of maturity curve and natural physiological maturity. So just be careful, because once you start putting those things in them prior to maturity, they come way faster once they've already hit maturity, and then you can get yourself in that position where maybe, to Brad's point earlier, you can get a little fleshy in the wrong places, and it is a little harder to get back. So both products very good, and I do agree with Brad. If you need fat, stuffed works better in that regard. Just pay attention to where you are in terms of size and weight, and realize where you are from a maturity standpoint.
Right. And don't, and like I said, be graceful with yourself. Because here's the thing, right? Show pigs are hard, right? I mean, it is hard, and we got to embrace how hard it is. And your job is to go out and find the magic pig, right? So that's the breeder's job, to go and raise and breed this magic pig that doesn't need anything. And then you've got to kind of embrace the fact that your guess is wrong and that it's not the perfect pig, right? And they're out there. They come around about every 100 years. So I don't know if we've got one out there. But what the fun part about this is as you bring your project in, you have to. I always say there's only one guy crazy enough to buy a pig at an auction because he's the last one bidding, right? Everybody else thinks that person is crazy or dumb or whatever for buying that pig because he's the only one that bought it, and so are willing to pay that. But now, after we bring our pigs home, we've assembled our team. We have to really take that. I'm so glad and fortunate I've got this pig, and really evaluate them for what they are. And what Brandon is talking about is probably one of the most overstepped and misunderstood parts of what we do, and that's judging maturity, right? I am 5'0" nothing. My wife is 5'2". Landry's probably 5'9" and looks like he could beat a 6 foot tall. This has all happened in a year. And it's funny, somebody will come see us, man, what have you been eating? Well, nothing. She's taken after his grandfather on her side. Like, we haven't changed anything. I'm saying his maturity is taking over. He looks like he'll never get chunky, but I guarantee you, sometime in college, that'll happen too, and he'll start realizing, his metabolism's different. I say all this to say, we buy a baby pig that looks perfect in our eyes. That's why we bought him. It's our job to be looking down the road on his maturity and going, when will he stop putting on lean gain and start putting on fat? And for me, that's why I'm giving myself from 245 to 285 pounds, or 40 pounds of gain over a 30-day period, right? To induce lots of fat. Here's the trade-off. You can't win a bunch of jackpot shows like that, right? So if you want to win jackpot shows, fat will help you until you're too fat. So this is the trade-off in the show pig world. And we had an old teammate that used to say this. I love it, so I'll bring it up. Begin with the end in mind. And our mind is we're trying to be competitive at a high level at state fairs and our county show. I always want to do good at our county. It's important to our family. It's important for the boys to compete at a high level with the kids that they see all the time. We love that. We love our show community in our county. And so, saying that, I still am going to try to have a lean animal with 40 pounds of gain, right? That I can induce too much fat if needed.
Let's go to Tyler's comments here. Overall strategy on getting them heavy muscle while staying sound. What are we doing to get get there. Also, thoughts on lymph node problems and solutions. No loaded questions here
That
in
seems
this
pretty
one.
easy.
Yeah. Well, I do think
Thank you for the question, Tyler. Though seriously,
I think it's a great question. Honestly, it's one that I think you could probably ask feeders over their career or families, and if they're being honest with you, I think they would tell you their selections probably changed over time. And I would say that I've worked with families that always liked greener, later maturing animals that were uh, built really well and very structurally correct and all the things. And they'd like to make those animals and put as much on them as they could. And I've worked with those same people that have maybe taken a different concept, maybe as they've gotten further in the project of maybe selecting pigs and trying to do things there long term. And I would say generally the trade off is that do I want to um, buy an animal that has more muscle and maybe feed them a little slower, or do I want to buy some of those animals that are maybe a little greener, a little later maturing, make the muscle, and hope like heck that everything that I do to make muscle doesn't impede skeletal correctness and soundness at the end. And so I do think that those are some of the decisions that you have. I guess, um, personally, I do think it's much like asking animals to grow faster from a weight perspective. At some time, they just can't afford to grow or gain anymore, and it is really hard to get one to speed up faster than they're really capable of speeding up. And so, I probably I prefer to feed animals slow. I think having more muscle, on some of those certain breeds, I do think that muscle affects or how you feed them affects maybe their skeleton a little bit more than others. But I do personally think that if you have muscle, you need to go slower. It's a little bit easier to get that animal right from a muscle perspective and a shape standpoint at the very end without doing as much damage. And so it is hard to get. It's hard to get it all wrapped into one. I do believe that, but I like to feed a little bit slower, a little bit lower that we can, and keep skeleton as good as we can. Now, at the same time, we've all had some of those that that you have to go a little bit harder at, and I do think that I do think that keeping those animals built as good as you can is great. No matter where their muscle is, I do think that skeletal correctness in feet and legs matters, and so we're generally going to try to keep one that that has some look, has some build, skeleton makes sense, but I would prefer them to have more muscle than not from a feeding perspective, just because I prefer to feed some of those things that are a little calmer, a little softer, a little slower. Um, and I feel like that, having that muscle already there, and then being able to not do anything negative on those kind of animals in terms of hurting skeleton. That's personally how I like to feed. Now, doesn't mean that that's the way that everybody likes to go. That's why there's different types of animals, and there's no magic guarantee on anything. That's why there's more than one pig sold at a sale or shown on a show. But I would tell you that I think a lot of it is based on how you like to feed, how some of your criteria is from that standpoint. But I do think that there's products like In Motion that we have that is a product I rely on very heavily in our feeding phase, whether it's an animal that has muscle or one that we're going to have to push on. I feel like it's a product that gives me protection at the hoof level as well as from a joint flex standpoint, and we really do prefer that product in our market from that standpoint. And the other thing I would tell you is even on those heavier muscled animals, there's still a time where you may have to push them, for 2, 3, 4 days of their life a little bit harder than you would ever anticipate, especially if you kept the reins pulled back just a little bit too hard. And so even on some of those animals, you do have to maybe push just a little bit more. And so products like In Motion is one that's always in our feed bucket here at our place. But that's just some differences on how we like to do it here, and I guess the type of feed the type of pigs that I prefer to feed here at my place.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, Tyler, is a couple things. Like we're all going to be at different stages of being a show dad, right? Or a parent, or a fitter, or a breeder. And like I say this all the time, you got to kind of embrace the challenge of the whole thing. When our kids were really little and we were just starting, I felt like we couldn't get out of third, right? I mean, I loved, and I'll still do this if I'm judging a show somewhere. There'll be a kid, and they'll just keep bringing me awesome built pigs that aren't intimidating enough, and they're like third, 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 like just. And I'm just like, man, I love the pigs that these kids are bringing because they understand livestock and they understand the structure or whatever. But they're maybe there'll be an animal in each class that'll just be a little extra and still move just as good. But they're beating 90% of them consistently, right? I love that. I think that's great. The way we got out of third is we started feeding the ones that scared us a little bit. And so if what scares you is pigs getting too fat, then you see fat really good and you can probably feed that animal better than someone who doesn't. So to me, I do not like it when pigs get too wide or they're bow-legged or whatever, right? I used to avoid buying any of those pigs. I was actually at a guy named Seth Swinson's house, and there was a crossbred gilt that was there, and I didn't like her. And he said, "Oh, I really thought you'd like that pig." And so I ended up buying her because he told me to. And he said, "You'll feed her better than anybody because you don't like her. Everybody else has liked her." Well, fast forward, the gilt wins like 25 straight jackpot shows, right? And I only say that because it really changed my mind on what you need to feed is feed the animal that scares you, because what that is that's telling you you're picking up on that if it's a manageable trait. She just had too much muscle, and to Brandon's point, I just put her immediately on a lower protein feed and fed the muscle out of her. And when I did that too much, as soon as I upped her protein, I got the muscle back like that because genetically she was trying to be heavier muscle the whole time. And so to me, I would tell you, feed the ones that scare you a little bit and you'll become a better feeder. Last thing on the lymph nodes. No one knows what that is or how to stop it. If you figure it out, don't tell any other feed company. Call us and we'll make lots of money together. But I would say this. The lymphatic system is the part of their body that filters out, dead stuff and holds it, and then it removes the swelling from your body. I mean, it removes a lot of natural swelling from tissue. It's a place where it can, I think it even stores like other parts of viral infections to kind of create a system so it can fight off infection. And so the first thing I do when I see lymph node problems is I take a temperature and we usually come back with some form of antibiotic. There have been times where we've gotten a longer acting antibiotic into them and we've seen a response. And so I would just say, like, usually it's a health related issue to start with. I do think it's genetic too, but that's my own bias. It's not science. But I would just tell you, first thing when you see a lymph node swell up, think about it like your own kiddo. You see that and you go, oh man, let's get a temperature and see what we've got. As far as the supplements and stuff, don't overthink it. Even though we're trying to sell them, don't overthink it, right? If you need more muscle, feed a higher protein. If you need more fat, feed more fat. I mean, that's why we have these different options, because we're giving you options that allow you to feed a higher or lower volume of those different nutrients. Okay, we got a few questions. You want to do it rapid fire?
Yeah, got some questions here. Let's get some rapid fire answers. It's getting late here over in the eastern side of the time zones. Let's Dan's questions just real quick here. Using Force-Sure for a jackpot or even a show, would you feed a scoop per feeding 5 days out, morning and evening, or half scoop and then do full feed on Friday? So Brandon, this is right up your alley here, and you have strong feelings about how to feed for sure leading up to your target show, leading up to
Yeah,
a target show.
yeah, we do. We'll do a scuba for sure in the feeding, morning and night. About 10 days out actually of big stuff, but for sure a week. That's kind of how we like to do it, and then we'll transition into the water when we get to the show. And what we'll see there is when we transition to the water, you're going to get more response because you're going to be tying it with overhydration, and so you're going to get more swell just all over their body, everywhere. And so having it in there helps kind of practice like we play, build it up, you get extra nutrition, and then you tie it with the water and you get the response that you're really looking to see.
Great question. For sure is definitely one of those products that you want to be feeding, especially if you're, leading up to your target show. We're in that final feeding phase, right? I mean, anytime you're needing to bolster some nutrition, lower our stress levels, increase our hydration, for sure is a great choice there. Let's jump to Michael's question about as quick as what we can do here. Feeding Durox, 170 pounds now. Target weight is 240/50 at target show in 50 days. Needing to feed them to clean up neck and bulk up. What do you suggest? It went away on me. In my bucket for a pound and a half a gain with a little push at 40 days.
Yeah, so you've got 70 pounds and 50 days. So you got about 1.4 pounds. Is that right? 1.4 times 50, 70 pounds. Okay, this is where we've got to, so you are trying to clean up their neck and bulk them up. Well, got a tough decision, Mr. Landry, right? Because when I hear bulk is the combination of muscle and fat. Now, there's going to be other people that tell you that certain products will put fat in one place and not another. And I mean, I don't see that. I think that's a genetic thing. I do think the faster you feed an animal protein and fat, the more it won't go to their face, if that makes sense, and down in their jowl. So products like Game On will help you get there faster down their back. Okay. But I'm going to tell you, okay, so I've got 50 days to put on this 70 pounds, 1.4. Are you showing in 50 days? And I know you personally, so you can reach out, and I'll help you with this. But if you're showing, okay, that'll give you a pound and a half gain with a little push in 40 days. Yeah. So I would personally have that animal. I would not go Game On yet or anything like that. Personally, I would start switching that pig over. I'd have it on full tank first of all, drop in belly, because what I'm really going to try to do is lessen that illusion. Right? I want to see if I can get enough mass down in their belly. Now, if you said, hey, they're already big belly, they're just flat ribbed and fat necked, and that's what we're trying to do. Well, here's where I'm going to ask you. Okay, you're probably not going to have it both ways. You probably don't get to burn a neck and go bulk. So let's pick one and really go to its strength. Yes, it'd be easy for me to sell you 3 different things and create a hocus pocus that's not going to work. I'm just not going to do that to you. Let's try to get you to win. So to me, I'm like, if the pig's not bulky and it's a barrow, let's make it bulky. So the last 30 days, I'm probably going to feed a level of Game On to get more mass and spread from shoulder back. Okay, that's what I'm doing. I mean, I've got barrows in the barn that are not going to be the greatest neck thing in the world, but I'm not going to remove their strength of mass and power to burn down their neck, right? I mean, that's the main thing, is I don't want to change their stripes and marginalize everything. So if he's got bulk and mass and tons of muscle and the whole deal, then yeah, maybe from a calorie standpoint, we can sit on him and let his natural calorie intake burn some of his fat by lessening his feed. But I also don't think 1.4 pounds on a Duroc is that hard to achieve over the next 40, 50 days. I think he'll try to do 2 pounds a day for one of those weeks. And on that week, that pig would be getting something like 803, a higher protein feed that I'm trying to put more muscle and less fat in. Real quick on the supplement on the InMotion. Yes, InMotion is a supplement for joint health and movement. It's probably not as aggressively marketed on my Facebook news feed as other ones, but it's incredibly effective. And you guys talk about value and price. Google that. I think you'll like the price. And then, yeah, Veronica, Nathan is awesome. He will chop these videos up if there's anything without my annoying voice on it, and put them back out. But he will save this in our Sunglo Facebook page for you to rewatch if you want.
Yeah, it'll be
And feel
all of
free.
our videos. Yeah, all of our videos are on our Facebook page. Might have to dig just a little bit, but we've also got a ton of videos on our YouTube channel, so you can check out. Just jump on YouTube, type in Sunglo feeds, and there's a pile of videos in there. I don't even know how many hours of content are on there. So a lot
Yeah,
of great resources. What I will tell you is that there's lots of different opinions there too. So don't get um, if you're trying to learn, if this is maybe something that's a little new to you, don't leave that feeling like you're trying to eat an elephant, right? Just one bite
yeah,
at a time, right? Like there's a lot of information out there. And there's a lot of folks that are well meaning in the information that they put out there. If you jump on any Facebook page, show pig Facebook page, right, there's armchair quarterbacks all over the place. But what I will say is the folks that we interview and the people that we talk to are experts in the field, and they are basing what they're talking about on the experience and the success that they've had. So um, please know that while there is a lot of information on there, just take it one step at a time, and hopefully you can find something that's of value to you. So um, we'll kind of wrap it up here. Appreciate everybody tuning in. We had really great viewership, really great comments back and forth. So again, this is recorded. It is going to show up on our Facebook page basically immediately, and we'll also stick it on our YouTube channel fairly soon as well. So with nothing else there in the comments, appreciate folks tuning in, and best of luck. And please let us know how we can help you. We appreciate you tuning in and watching with us.
see you guys.
See you. Thank
You.
you.